Hey, what is good, my people? Welcome to my RuneScape 3 Slayer Master tier list. So recently, with the new content release known as the Sanctum of Rebirth, we got a bit more backstory in regards to the lore of the various characters central to the Slayer skill. So I thought I'd deviate a bit from my normal style videos to try and bring you something a little more fresh to the channel. I am going to be ranking the Slayer Masters on their own personal lore, and also their aesthetic appearance. So with each member, I'll be giving some lore dump to help you guys and myself make some judgments as to where I put them on this tier list. At the end of the video in the comments, be sure to sound off on your thoughts of my rankings and let me know what you guys would change. With that being said, let's get into it. Alright guys, just a quick disclaimer. I am just going to be ranking the legit Slayer Masters and will not be going over some of the other characters who act sort of as mock Slayer Masters, like Ling in the Ark, Marcus in the Slayer Tower, Erskine in the Wilderness or Death for Reaper assignments. Secondly, this is not going to be an extremely comprehensive deep dive on all Sanctum lore. If you would like to catch up on the current storylines, I really suggest that you please check out my friend PrideSlayer77 on YouTube. He has some incredible breakdowns and it is definitely worth your time. Lastly, I will have timestamps in the description if you'd like to jump around. So with all that out of the way, let's get to a brief overview of how the Slayers came to be. So the Slayer Masters are members of the Order of the Slayer Masters and are a group dedicated to eradicating dangerous beasts. After the death of Tumekin, life in the Kuradal desert became harsher due to a lack of leadership and an increase in monsters. Noticing this, Amazchna, in one of her many disguises, quickly gathered 7 men and women and together founded the Order. They learned how to defeat the monsters by reading their behaviors and noticing their tendencies, leading to their ability to target their weaknesses, and in turn, embarked on missions to protect the settlements of the region. Its original members were Cadillacs, Fiza, Nakatra, Mel-El, Bura, Khalit, and Tolu. This is reinforced when talking to the ghost of Fiza in the sunken pyramid off the coast of Menaphos, when she says, "Then one day, a woman approached Cadillacs and myself with an opportunity. She was creating a group," she explained, "that would fight to preserve the safety of all that lived in the desert. She led us and 5 others to this very building where we founded the Order of the Slayer Masters. This is where it all began. Where I, one of the 7 original Slayer Masters, placed my sword down and I swore that I would forevermore be dedicated to the deliverance of souls to the afterlife." The Order played a key role in defeating a demon invasion at Uzur, working alongside the golems and priests to repel the forces and seal the portal to their dimension. After the battle, the Order created the first enchanted gem, made from modified golem cores, which helped address the issue of covering more ground and maintaining communication over long distances. Unfortunately, this was the start of a series of troubled decisions. When the Order created that first prototype enchanted gem, Nakatra was very keen to notice just how useful it would be to become the catalyst for her vision to restore Amazchna's power. You see, previously, Amazchna had taken a liking to Nakatra and blessed her, resulting in her having an unaging body, to which she felt the need to repay. She took that extra gem and made her way to the caverns underneath Polnevich, where she performed a ritual and created a machine that would restore Amazcot to prominence. This machine would attract and trap all the souls slain in the desert, and hold them to power a life force that would continue to charge over time. Eventually, Cadillacs and Fiza discovered that they were unbeknownst aiding to the empowerment of Amazcot all along, and made plans to move the Order out of the desert. Amazcot became aware of Cadillacs and Fiza's knowledge of her plan, and had them killed and bound to their tombs for all eternity, leaving Nakatra unopposed in furthering their goals. Nakatra would then travel to the jungle, where she would successfully recruit Lapalok to the Order, a supporter of Amazcot. She would eventually arrive in the underworld as a living being, something that should not have been possible for a majority of mortal life. She would then become the Soul Devourer, though still living and retaining her appearance and intellect, which was in large part due to the Sanctum's power. Here, she would continue to evolve and corrupt until the Sixth Age, when she tasked a suspicious stranger to gather souls from the city of So, there you have it, guys, a little context to the situation we face today. Now, on to the rankings. So, I am going to cluster Duradal, Turael, and Mazchna together because all three of them share one big event. I am going to place Mazchna in the C row, Turael in the D row, and Duradal in the B row. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on Duradal and finish with their shared story. So, Duradal excelled in both Slayer and combat, and for much of his life was considered to be the most powerful master of his time. Duradal had a very tumultuous and mysterious path to obtaining these accomplishments, though, as he says during the Walguthic Sleep quest. Let's just say that you don't arrive as the greatest Slayer Master overnight, without a lot of blood and slaughter. I took some shortcuts and trod on some very important toes. The method is a secret that will go to my grave. I cannot take the chance that you would be tempted as I was. So, continuing on here, during the skirmish at the Chaos Temple as part of the ongoing conflicts against the evil Mashara Lucian, a small fellowship took up arms against him with the adventurer leading the charge, disguised as Surik Magus, leader of the Dagon High. With them in the group was Haralak, Mazchna, Sloane, Duradal, Hazelmere, Cyrisus, Turael, and Gomel. The powerful necromancer Lucian starts with a summoning incantation to bring forth a dozen undead heroes to aid him. Lucian fires a black energy spell, which incinerates two elite black knights that came with the adventurers, showcasing what they will be dealing with. While Mazchna and Haralak engage the undead horde, Lucian charges up a huge wave of death magic and hurls it towards the oncoming party. Sloane and Duradal do their best to twist themselves and outmaneuver the spell, but it would not stop until it found its target, ultimately killing the two instantaneously. Hazelmere, in a bout of desperation, unleashes a devastating attack on Lucian, firing a barrage of magical crystals. But with the Staff of Armadil, Lucian deflects it with just a flick of his wrist. Cyrisus and Turael join the fray and manage to get close enough to the Mazharat to hit him with melee, but their concussive blows simply don't land, shattering their weapons on impact. Enraged, Lucian, with a shadow spell, blasts Gomel, Cyrisus, and Turael into oblivion, and as it ricochets from body to body, it starts heading for Hazelmere as well. Hazelmere pops the Spirit Tree teleport, but it's too late. It is interrupted, and he too perishes at the hands of Lucian. As Lucian takes a glance at his lovely destruction, he teleports away, leaving only Harlack, Mazchna, and the Adventurer in his wake. So my reasoning for my rankings here is that Turael really has no lore other than this event, and well, he dies. Also, visually, I think he is incredibly bland for a Slayer Master, only donning a very simple robe and a steel halberd, so not really too intimidating. For Mazchna, he also doesn't have any personal lore really outside of this event, and mostly just has comments that he comes from the Abyss. I put him in C, as I think the potential lore for him could be really dope if it was ever fleshed out, and his armor and sword definitely do give him a leg up over Turael. Lastly, for Duradal, you heard a bit about him briefly, and I like how he is sort of shrouded in mystery in terms of how he made it to the top of his game. If you look a bit deeper on him, there's hints that he may have had an unknown entity or power guiding his actions, which I think is really cool. He did die pretty early on against Lucian, and visually, he doesn't look too ruthless, but I did put him in the B row. Moving on to Jacquelin, I'm placing her in C. And although Jacquelin has no backstory, visually, I think she does look pretty awesome. She has this whole assassin theme with these kunai knives and stuff, so I think that's pretty sick, and that alone I think propels her to the C row. Moving on to Vannaka, I'm going to put him in the B row. Vannaka does have a little bit of lore, so let's take a look at that. Vannaka has always had great prowess in combat. He is a devout Saradominist and is highly regarded by Saradomin himself due to his great skill and strength and fantastic sword-bearing art. He previously served in Saradomin's army of warriors to great success and later trained under the great Duradal. When Vannaka thought himself worthy, he challenged his mentor to a big duel to see who would claim rights as the best Slayer Master. Vannaka lost, and although he fought bravely, he couldn't seem to shake the shame he brought upon his name. So he put himself in self-imposed exile, where he eventually ended up becoming the combat instructor on Tutorial Island until the year 169 of the 5th Age, when he re-emerged once again. I have him in the B category. I really wish that his foray with the Saradomin army was expanded on, but nonetheless, he is super iconic to the game, and his badass look visually really lends itself to that of a Slayer Master. You know, the dragon square shields, I love that. Alright guys, as you can see, I'm trying to kind of power through some of the more basic Slayer Masters, and none hits more in that category than Sumona. Sumona is just purely an incarnation of Almascut, and although she sends you on the Smoking Kills quest, in this instance I would just urge you to look up the full lore of Almascut and see how this falls into the overall timeline. Aesthetically, very weak as well, just a plain desert robe. I just feel like many other desert-themed characters would have suited this role a lot better. So for those reasons, I'm putting Sumona in the D row. So the last sort of Slayer Master with not a lot of super compelling personal lore would be Chaeldar, who I'll be putting in the C row. Now, Chaeldar, I'm not going to go into the whole lore of the fairies or how Guthix kind of found them and everything like that, but she was part of the defense squad during the attempt to assassinate Guthix at the end of the 5th Age during the World Wakes quest. So let's take a look at that. For context, let me give you just a fairly complex TLDR of the situation. In 182 of the 5th Age, an archaeologist by the name of Orlando Smith discovered an ancient Guthixian site in the heart of Kandarin and tasked an adventurer to open its doors, which they were able to do. But with that success, allowed the Majora Sliski to also enter unwillingly. Orlando came upon a butterfly-shaped artifact, in which he and the adventurer took, which set off a detection alarm system, and the protectors of the cave revealed themselves, the automatons. They said they detected a Majora, but did not believe Orlando to be the peaceful human he said he was, so they killed him with a blast of magic. When the adventurer finally defeated them, Sliski appeared as Guthix, chastising them, but the adventurer sees right through his guise. Sliski predicted that followers of other gods were sure to arrive soon, and concealed the adventurer in the Shadow Realm as he traveled to the wilderness crater to Guthix's sword. It was vibrating with a red light, signifying that the edicts may be compromised. The alarm was alerting all the Guthixian stone circles around Gielinor, but one such circle was under Zamorakian control, whose allies teleported to Zamorakel's fort to relay the news. Before going to the newly revealed Guthixian cave, Zamorakel went to the God Wars dungeon, only to witness the great Zilyana emerge, an important figure in the plans they had. Once Zilyana made it to the cave, she was followed by Kriara and then Krill Sutsaroth, who charged through the wall to continue into the next chamber, ignoring Zilyana's warnings. Kree tried to rationalize with the adventurer that violence is not in line with Armadyl, and that there was no need for collateral victims, but the player would refuse to leave. After defeating Kree, the adventurer proceeds to the next chamber, where Zilyana and Krill are trying to open a huge door in a temporary alliance until Guthix is found. They were unsuccessful in their attempts, so they left to find an alternative route. All the while, the adventurer noticed that boulders were needed to be rolled onto a pressure plate to unlock the mechanism. At that point, a squadron of important Guthixians teleported in. Leader of the Cruxiqual Knights, Quigameeks, Chaeldar, Fiara, Juna, Death, and Valuta. The group introduced themselves and explained their goals: to protect Guthix at all costs. After figuring out the puzzle and opening the door, they proceeded into the next area, where they took a lift in the central chamber down to a deep and dank cavern. As their group made their way further, a loud crash came out of the bedrock, to which another automaton emerged, although this time it was identified as Krez, another guardian of Guthix. At this point, the cave began to shake, as Krez explained its cause, several fanatics wishing to kill Guthix and return their gods to Gielinor. The chamber had 4 badly protected wings, so the team split up to defend the oncoming waves. Fiara and Voluta took one entrance, Death another, Chaeldar and the Cruxiqual leader in the third, and Krez and his automatons in the final tunnel. The first area to be breached is the third chamber with Chaeldar, as the mighty General Grardar and his minions flood through the barricades, mashing and gnawing for a fight. Although possessed with unimaginable strength, they were no match for the incredibly light and agile fairy warrior, who picked them off with incredible swiftness as the adventurer engaged with Grardor. The Bandosian general would soon fall and retreat back to the God Wars. Okay guys, I'm going to cut it off there and not spoil the rest if you haven't yet completed the World Wakes quest. It's a really good quest. So that was the extent of Chaeldar's involvement. Visually, she is really nothing special, so like I said, I'm keeping her there in the C row. Alright, so now it's time for Laniakea, who I'm going to be ranking as the first S tier. So let's hear Laniakea's tale. Very little is known about her early life, but she was presumably born somewhere in the Eastern Lands, a treacherous place full of death and danger. Eventually, she decided to leave her village and sail west, where she arrived at the human kingdoms sometime later. During her travels, she acquired an ancient doll from an ancient witch coven that was filled with voodoo magic. This magic allowed her to inflict pain on the soul she linked to it. However, she would not use it unless she exhausted all other options. And on top of that, the coven had been destroyed along with all its contents and knowledge by the time she had picked it up, so she knew her control with it was a bit shaky. She prefers using poison against her enemies, letting it do the dirty work for her. She also drinks her own poisons periodically as a way to make her immune to them. She soon met the Order of the Slayer Masters while tracking down a beast. Both parties meeting by pure coincidence, Laniakea sought them as competition and outperformed the Order by taking down the creature before they could, promptly recruiting her to their cause. And though initially hesitant due to her upbringing, she eventually accepted because of the lessons she learned from them over the years, seeking much wisdoms from the likes of Morvran and Kuradal, along with a desire to fit in. However, sometime later, after meeting a man in the Order, she left them. She felt vulnerable after sensing he was hiding something deep down, and unprepared for these alien feelings, decided to forge her own path. In her own adventures, she learned about the player's noble deeds, and was requested by King Roald of Varrock to assist in an expedition to Anachronia, where she was surprised to learn that there was more than meets the eye on this island. After she was ambushed by a Pavosaurus Rex, she decided to explore more of the continent by herself, though she would frequently pop in at the base camp to see how things were progressing. She was keenly interested in the southeastern ruins, along with some new sources of poison from the vile blooms and fugu fish. After being on Anachronia for a while, she met up with Thok and Charos, who came in search of Karapak. The Dragonkin appeared at the base camp and allegedly boasted of his plan to destroy the world. When Karapak set the island's dinosaurs on a rampage, Laniakea stayed at the base camp to defend a group of archaeologists who failed to evacuate, using her spear and poisons to protect them from harm. After foiling Karapak's plot, she heard and felt a faint tremor underneath the fortress she had gone to. She tagged along with a group of adventurers to investigate the disturbance. The adventurers never returned, but she did, then revealing to the World Guardian that she had deciphered a door, but it was magically locked and could only be unsealed with the use of shadow anima, which she thought was the cause of the adventurer's death. The World Guardian was able to unlock the door, and Laniakea decided to accompany them inside. However, the facility was emanating massive amounts of toxic shadow anima that nearly killed her, barely getting out in time. It was Raksha, the Shadow Colossus. Visually, Laniakea has a great look. This sort of mixture of a warlock warrior hybrid with voodoo magic and poisons, but on top of that, you got the badass spear. So I think Laniakea for sure deserves the S tier. Alright guys, up next we have Mandrith, who I'm going to be putting in the B tier. Now, Mandrith is a towering figure who is descended from the first of the clans of men, whose legends speak of the ones to commit the very first murder on Gielinor. For this crime, his people have forever been cursed to an eternity, overwatching those who would do the same. Given his terrifying dress, massive blade at his hip, and his remarkable size, there is very little left to the imagination as to why he has survived in the wilderness. According to Mandrith, his garb has been passed down from father to son for generations. He appears to be equipped to that of an old-style player killer, a fast and deadly weapon with little actual armor protection, wild-looking, and incredibly strong, yet lacking in dexterity. This is appropriate as he used to be the custodian of the wilderness volcano when Bounty Hunter was still hosted there, until they had to shut down the operation due to a violent eruption. Mandrith would abandon the volcano and move to Edgeville when various monsters moved into the crater, where he began taking an interest in ancient artifacts. Eventually, Mandrith would then become a Slayer Master. Visually, I don't feel like he really aligns with his descriptions, but I do think his lore is kind of cool, and I'd really like to hear the events of his clan's first murder specifically. I really hope that they elaborate on that in the future. That'd be a cool storyline. So we are going to now move on to the Raptor, who I am going to put in the A row. The Raptor is one of the 7 signature heroes and a fierce warrior. Their armor was made by Linza, with the helmet being enchanted by Charos to alter the wearer's voice. Some of the Raptor's major involvements include: in the year 169 of the 5th Age, they heard of a strange affliction in Remington, where they met Lucille, and using their intimidating presence, pressured her to give them a restless sleep potion, which would be needed to find out who the culprit was. The raptor was met by the adventurer, and the two followed the voice of the men's souls, leading to a chasm from which they jumped into. They were swallowed by the Queen Black Dragon, but got separated in different parts of the beast. The raptors slashed their way through the dragon's insides until they found the witch Remora. The adventurer convinced Raptor to spare her and handed the witch her crossbow, which she used to burst the cyst she was in, causing the dragon to spit the three of them out. With the dragon's dream disturbed, she unleashed a barrage of dragon fire at the trio. The raptor shielded the attack, but Remora was ultimately burned to a crisp. And now, with the fallen witch's pendant, they teleported out to safety. So, after a security incident in Fort Forinthy, the World Guardian was advised by Overseer Civ to secure its facilities before another incident might occur. They informed the player that the raptor had just arrived and asked that you consult them on how to proceed, as they went to go find some of the other guards. The raptor explained that their lands were under attack once again, as numerous fetid zombies made their way towards the doors leading into the fort. After the zombies were eliminated, we were encouraged to fortify the walls before they would begin making a ramp from their corpses. Once the defenses were up, Civ returned with a troop of dark warriors, putting them in command of the World Guardian and the Raptor. Taking them out, they pushed their way through the packs of undead until out of nowhere, an armored phantom appeared to wreak havoc on the crew. They quickly slew it, but the raptor commented that it must have come from the north, so they entered a withered crypt, only to find Zimorgul inside, who had been creating all of these creatures. Surprised to see the duo, Zimorgul claimed he had gotten everything he needed and summoned forth a massive amount of undead that the two had to fall back to reevaluate their next moves. Sometime after discovering the crypt, the raptor decided they were going to go back a second time. The World Guardian was concerned about leaving the fort so lightly guarded, as the current guards on patrol were only melee warriors and lacked discipline. So they hired Sophia to become the new captain, after she proposed building a Fletcher's workshop to produce ranged weapons for the guards. With the fort now in capable hands, they made their way to the crypt once again. The raptor fought off several risen ghosts while the player scavenges materials to create a bridge to the vault. After close consideration of the door, they pry out a small polyhedral device from the seal, recognizing it as a dragonkin item. They took the artifact to Reldo in the Varrock library to get some more answers, and it appeared that its purpose was to record dragonkin dreams, and that it was activated by staring into one of its many facets. The raptor, without pause, looked into one of them and immediately fell asleep. Reldo then told the World Guardian that the item brought about the user's worst nightmares as a safeguard against would-be thieves, before handing them a potion of dreamless sleep to repel its effects and enter the raptor's nightmare. Once inside, the pair found a house inside of the dreamscape, and as they made their way closer, a girl and her two parents appeared before the house. The house burst into flame, and as the two approached the inside of the house, the parents could be seen dead and the little girl crying in the corner. When the World Guardian reaches out to her, The Raptor reveals that it's no use, since the girl had died long ago. When he questioned how they knew this, they said that they were that little girl, as the Raptor removed their helmet to show their true identity. The Raptor told the player not to dwell on their persona and continued investigating the nightmare until they found out what Zamorgul's plans were. When they returned to the real world, the Raptor asked to please keep their identity hidden as they raced back to the vault. As they made their way inside, they fought the undead and restored the map in the center of the crypt, revealing an island in the Fremnik Seas. Unsure as to what the island was or why it was hidden, they relayed the information to Overseer Civ, who told them that it was called Ungale, and that the Fremnik avoided it as there was a powerful dragon there. With information in hand, they knew Zamorgul's interest. It was time to awaken the dragon. In terms of the Raptor's visual style, I really enjoy it. The armor set and the elite armor set that you can get from the Raptor's chest just looks awesome, and I also like the look of the set that you can get by completing the hard waves, I think, at the Ungale combat activity after the quest. So with all that being said, I'm putting the Raptor in the A slot. So next up is Morvran, and I'm putting him on the S tier. So Morvran was the head of intelligence for the Ironworth clan, and along with Esselt, led a warband whose duty was to assassinate enemies, as stated by him during the Plague's End quest, when he says, "I looked up to my uncle. It was he who appointed me as our clan's head of intelligence. It was my duty to amass knowledge of our enemies, their strengths and weaknesses, and how best to defeat them. I was also in charge of interrogations and assassinations." This all took place during the Elven Civil War, when Lord Ironworth betrayed the rest of the Elven clans, denouncing Saren and instead worshipping the Dark Lord. This conflict saw Lord Ironworth and King Lathis make a pact to start a false plague in West Ardougne, in exchange for killing King Tyrus in order to restore King Lathis's rule over Kandarin. Prifddinas reverted back to a crystal seed, and the Ironworth set up camp outside and attempted to summon the Dark Lord in order to wipe out the entire population of West Ardougne and rebuild Prifddinas in their vision. Word got into the hands of the rebel elves, and thus started the events that would lead to the Ironworth downfall. When the war ended and Lord Ironworth was killed by the Dark Lord, Morvran relinquished his position as next in line for lordship, allowing Iestern Edern to lead the clan. During the Plague's End quest, Morvran states, "There is need of someone such as I to ensure the safety of all the clans. The clan Ironworth needs a leader with a more palatable outlook. This is why I have waived my right of lordship over to Leston. He is an unconventional choice, but a necessary one." From here, Morvran goes out on his own and meets another familiar face. In the Plague's End quest, he says, "In my travels, I made the acquaintance of a lovely young lady by the name of Kuradal. She taught me much about the wider world, and I her about the many mysteries of this world closed off to her. She is a remarkable woman. I found myself fascinated by her and what she does, and so I decided to turn my talents and knowledge towards slaying." When Morvran reflects back to his times of war, he knows he stayed true to himself throughout his life, and proud to be where he stands today. In the Plague's End quest, he closes with this, Look, I was never a fan of the whole Dark Lord business, but as an Ironworth, I am duty-bound to my lord. We take duty seriously, something the other clans are less concerned over. I cannot speak for the actions of others, but I always ensured that my own actions, my orders, were just. Within any war, each individual must draw their own lines. I can hold my head high, knowing I remain true to my beliefs. Visually, I think Morvran looks pretty good. I'm already a fan of the elven civilian clothes, but he's kind of mixed that up to make it a little more menacing. And I think he looks really great. So we have Morvran there in the S tier. Okay, so the last Slayer Master that we have is Kuradal. Kuradal was born to Duradal and a yet-to-be-revealed mother. When speaking to her about herself, she reveals that she has been engaged in combat training since childhood, going as far as to sneak out in the dead of night and slay tougher and tougher creatures to try and surpass her father. She trained in Slayer from a young age under her father's guidance, and always had the desire to be the best, to surpass his legacy, and carve out her own. But at some point, Kuradal's mother and father separated. She had made many preparations to reunite the two before Duradal's death, but regretted not executing this while her father was still alive. After completion of the Ritual of the Mazchna quest, Kuradal says that she was at the Ritual Plateau, fighting the Mazchna, their minions, and the Glacier. Kuradal is still extremely angry that she was not the one to kill Lucian, which would have avenged her father's death, but instead, it was some dragonkin, who were now the target of Kuradal's vengeance, for taking her rightful kill. Kuradal was also present in Necrocirtus's vision, in which Draenor village was attacked and Sir Tiffy dies. The reason I'm not giving a breakdown of the Ritual of the Mazchna fight is because Kuradal really isn't part of it. Like, in essence, she was there, but her actions really weren't explained much. There was really only a cutscene of her crying over Lucian's dead body at the end of the quest. Visually, I like Kuradal, more dressed up than her father, with more kind of protected plate, yet still has that really cool tribal feel. So I'm going to actually throw a little curveball here at the end, and I'm going to put Kuradal in the A tier. I don't think she really has great lore, but I do think her lore specifically would be the most relevant to the current game. She could in the future go on like a whole revenge tour to killing the Dragonkin who killed Lucian, and that could take us down sort of a wild adventure. Also, this mysterious mother of hers could go in a lot of different twists. So I think with that being said, I'm gonna chuck her up in the A tier. All right, so anyways, y'all, that's what I have for you. Let me know what you thought of this video and rank yours as well, as I'm really curious. RuneScape forever.